when Jorge's first love came back. He told me to die. That night, I burned everything that tied me to him. Later, when we met again, I had become his future sister-in-law. In the private room, Jorge lost his composure on the spot. His eyes red as he questioned me. Didn't you say you'd love me forever? The man sitting at the head of the table lowered his gaze, expressionless as he lit a cigarette. If you're tired of living, go die. But stop bothering my wife. Chapter 01. When I pushed open the door to the private room, Jorge was chatting happily with someone. He glanced up and saw me, first freezing for a moment. Then his expression darkened. The others followed his gaze, and they recognized me as well. Someone whispered, "Isn't that Jorge's ex-girlfriend? The one who burned 5 million that time? The legendary badass?" It really is her. Why did she suddenly come back? Is she trying to get back together with Jorge? Pfft, there's no way Jorge would still want her. Jorge hadn't even said a word yet, and his friends were already rushing to defend him, throwing all kinds of insults my way. But I didn't care. I wasn't here today to see Jorge. Anyway, I walked toward the man sitting at the head of the table. Everyone's eyes widened, because sitting there was none other than Jorge's older brother, Samuel. He naturally extended his hand toward me, and I placed mine into his. Samuel said, "Let me introduce you to everyone. This is my fiancée, Emma." The two people who had insulted me earlier immediately turned pale, their expressions shifting between embarrassment and fear, their eyes nervously avoiding mine. Jorge looked like he had been struck by lightning. He probably never imagined that I would go from being his ex-girlfriend to becoming his future sister-in-law. Chapter 02. Everyone in the circle knew that offending Jorge could at worst lead to a scolding or a beating, but offending Samuel? That was a different story. He was someone you didn't mess with if you valued your life. Samuel was notorious for being ruthless and quiet. When he openly introduced me as his fiancée after those insults were thrown my way, it meant one thing. Those two who couldn't keep their mouths shut were in big trouble. The rest of the group immediately became cautious, no one daring to show me any disrespect, except for Jorge, who gave a cold laugh in my direction. He sneered at me. You think you're fit to marry into our family?" I didn't get angry. Compared to everything that happened 3 years ago, this moment was nothing. I simply smiled and asked, "If I'm not worthy, then who is? Miss Gloria?" Gloria was Jorge's first love, the woman he had always been secretly in love with. When I was with him, I had no idea he still carried feelings for her. Then, when Gloria returned to the country, Jorge wanted to break up with me but didn't want to look like the bad guy, so he used emotional manipulation to try to force me to end it first. When I didn't give in, he grew frustrated and publicly humiliated me, accusing me of being a gold digger, using his family for their money, and when I tried to defend myself, he shouted at me, telling me to go die. I didn't die. Instead, that very night, I set fire to everything that tied me to him. Jorge swore he'd find me and scatter my ashes, but of course, he couldn't find me, because I was with his brother, Samuel. Samuel knew everything about Jorge. Chapter 03. The tense atmosphere in the room made everyone uncomfortable, except for Samuel and me, the ever-imposing Samuel, who sat like a god on his pedestal, even peeled a shrimp for me by hand. The way everyone looked at me became even more fearful and respectful. What they didn't know was that Samuel hadn't originally planned to attend this dinner. Jorge's friends weren't worth his time, but I wanted to come. I wanted to settle the score from 3 years ago. After drinking 2 glasses of wine, I was feeling a little tipsy and leaned against Samuel's shoulder. Jorge thought I was doing it on purpose to provoke him. After all, even after 3 years, he still hadn't won over Gloria. And how could a man endure both failure and being provoked? Grinding his teeth, he slammed his glass onto the table with a loud thud. "Jorge," someone beside him whispered a warning, trying to calm him down. But Jorge didn't care. He was always temperamental and self-centered. "Emma, what's the meaning of this?" Hearing my name, I looked up, genuinely confused. What's wrong? Perhaps it was the alcohol or his overwhelming anger, but Jorge's eyes were slightly red as he mocked and questioned me. "Didn't you say you'd love me forever?" Did I? I don't remember, even if I had said it. It was only because I was too young and couldn't tell the difference between a man and a dog back then. Jorge became even angrier and stood up, walking toward me as if he was about to lay hands on me. Suddenly, a quiet click broke the tension in the room. It was Samuel lighting a cigarette. His face remained expressionless, showing no hint of emotion. He didn't even bother to look at Jorge, simply lowering his gaze and calmly saying, "If you're tired of living, go die, but stop bothering my wife." Going from fiancé to wife wasn't just a change in title, it was a warning to Jorge. If he kept harassing his future sister-in-law, Samuel would deal with him personally. Chapter 04. Samuel and I left first, leaving Jorge behind in a fit of helpless rage. Once in the car, I thanked Samuel. "Boss, thanks for backing me up." Samuel's expression remained as calm as ever, but his eyes were deep and unreadable, giving no clue as to what he was truly thinking. In truth, what was between us was nothing more than a transaction. Jorge was, after all, his younger brother. That he had embarrassed Jorge in public to stand up for me made me feel genuinely grateful. But unfortunately, while he sat high above the clouds, I was already mired deep in the mud. I turned to the driver and said, "Pull over at the next intersection. I'll get off there." The driver hadn't had time to respond before Samuel suddenly grabbed my wrist and yanked me towards him. I stumbled, falling into his arms. "Samuel, want to come home with me tonight?" "He's definitely going to come and question me. Would that mean sharing a room with you?" "Depends on you. If we want to make the drama even more thrilling, then yes, sharing a room is." Chapter 05. Just as Samuel predicted, we hadn't been back at the family estate for long before Jorge came rushing in, banging loudly on the door despite the late hour. Samuel went to open the door, staring at him with a grim expression. Jorge, still fuming, didn't even consider the usual fear he had of Samuel. Instead, his anger took over as he spat out, "Is Emma here? Did you bring her back?" Samuel glanced towards the bathroom. I had just finished showering and walked out. "What's going on?" I asked, walking toward them. Jorge's expression turned murderous in an instant, his tone dripping with disdain. "Emma, have you forgotten what a pathetic simp you were when you were with me? How dare you seduce my brother now? You." Before Jorge could finish, Samuel suddenly pulled me into his arms. "It's me who seduced Emma," Samuel said, cutting him off. Sensing my shock, he tightened his grip on me, holding me even closer. My face was nearly pressed against his chest. Jorge seethed. "Brother, have you lost your mind? She's just a gold digger." "She." Before he could say more, Samuel slammed the door shut in his face. Then, without missing a beat, he pinned me against the door. "Will you play along?" he asked. Every muscle in my body tensed, my face burning with heat. People always said Samuel had a face that could stir desire. Yet he was known for not being interested in women. But right now, his face was so close, his strong arm around my waist, the heat radiating from his body. Everything about the moment was charged with tension. Outside the door, Jorge's voice could be heard, yelling in frustration, "Emma, I will never let you into this family. Stop dreaming." Really? Because right now, it sure felt like Samuel was genuinely trying to seduce me. Chapter 06. The breathing between us became shallow and uneven as our kiss deepened. Soft, intimate sounds drifted through the air, even reaching outside the door. Jorge, unable to contain his fury, slammed his hand against the door with a loud bang. Startled, I flinched instinctively. Samuel wrapped his arms tightly around me, his soft chuckle vibrating through his chest. "What are you afraid of? He's not going to dare break the door down." With Samuel protecting me at this moment, Jorge wouldn't be able to touch me. But what about afterward? When this arrangement was over, would Samuel still shield me? "Samuel," I murmured, my voice hesitant. "This isn't the time to be formal," he whispered, his lips brushing my ear. "Call me by my name, Samuel." I finally whispered. "MMM," came his deep, magnetic reply, the sound drawing me in like a spell. In this charged atmosphere, his voice was hypnotic, pulling me further into his orbit. My legs felt weak, and I couldn't meet his gaze anymore. My voice dropped even lower as I asked, Can we add one more condition to our agreement? Yes, he answered without hesitation, but I hadn't even told him what I wanted to add yet. I wondered, was this just how men acted before they fully claimed you, saying anything, promising everything? Chapter 07. Just as I was on the verge of pushing him away, Samuel suddenly stepped back, releasing me and putting a few feet of space between us. I looked up at him in surprise. Samuel tilted his chin toward the door. He's gone. He meant Jorge. I could hear the sound of his footsteps fading away, though his angry muttering continued for a while longer. Once the noise outside finally disappeared, Samuel spoke again. I'll sleep on the couch tonight. Aw, I blurted out in surprise. Samuel turned to look at me, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. What? Did you have a different idea? I didn't have another idea, just a sense of guilt. After all, I was the one who had asked for his help in putting on this performance. Yet halfway through, I'd started doubting his intentions, assuming the worst. How stupid of me. Trying to salvage the situation, I quickly said, "We can share the bed." After all, he wouldn't do anything to me. I thought Samuel would refuse, but to my surprise, he agreed immediately. All right. Why did I suddenly feel like he had been waiting for me to suggest that all along? Was it really just my imagination? Chapter 08. Last night, Jorge swore I would never be allowed into his family's home, and it seemed he was doing everything in his power to ensure that. The next morning, he was sitting stiffly on the couch, waiting for me. When he saw me, he tossed a stack of photos onto the coffee table with a sneer. Take a look. They were photos taken by gossip media during the time we were together. I had always wondered why. During the time I was with Jorge, nobody outside of his close circle knew about our relationship. Given that Samuel was a prominent figure, it didn't make sense that the press wasn't interested in the private life of his younger brother. Now, I knew why. Jorge never wanted the public to know. He had bought all the photos to keep our relationship under wraps. He hadn't imagined that one day those same photos would be used to blackmail me. Break it off with my brother right now, or I'll send these to every tabloid. Have them published everywhere. And then what? I leaned forward and picked up one of the photos from the top of the pile, glanced at it briefly, unimpressed, and tossed it back onto the table. My indifference only fueled Jorge's rage. With clenched fists, he grabbed the photos again and threw them in my face. The sharp edges of the photos scraped across my skin, leaving faint red marks. Jorge's voice dripped with disdain as he spat. Do you think my family will ever let you marry into it? You were with me first, and now you're with my brother? My parents will never accept you. I raised a hand to my face. The pain was minimal, but the humiliation stung far more. He seemed to forget that he had never even told his parents about us. Our relationship had been entirely his secret, and he was the one who had betrayed me. So what right did he have to command me like this? I raised my hand and slapped him across the face, the sound reverberating sharply in the room. Jorge was stunned. When he came back to his senses, he raised his hand to strike me. The power dynamic between us was clear. If he hit me, especially here in his home, I'd have no way to defend myself. So I turned and ran, but before I could get far, I collided with a solid chest. It was Samuel. Chapter 09. At around 5 in the morning, Samuel had received an urgent call. He mentioned something about needing to handle an emergency and rushed out. I didn't expect him to come back. After all, his life was busy, and I figured he would head straight to work after dealing with the issue. But he had not only returned, he had done so just in time. Samuel! I cried out, clinging to his sleeve like he was the only thing that could save me. Samuel lowered his gaze to meet mine. The coldness that usually lingered on his face softened in that instant, and my heart skipped a beat. It was such a strange, unfamiliar feeling. Samuel gently ruffled my hair, as if to soothe me, then looked up at Jorge, who still had his hand raised. "What do you think you're doing?" he asked. His tone wasn't harsh, but the weight of his presence was undeniable. It felt like a mountain pressing down on Jorge, forcing him to lower his hand. Still, Jorge, unwilling to lose face, stubbornly retorted, "She's nothing. How dare she hit me?" "Because she's mine," Samuel said, his eyes never leaving the red marks on my face. There was something in his gaze, a hint of tenderness, maybe even concern, that took me by surprise. I didn't know why Samuel had said those words, but how could anyone resist such blatant favoritism? At that moment, I realized that our arrangement, our so-called transaction, had shifted. I had caught feelings, but just as Jorge had pointed out, how could someone like me ever think I could fit into his family? Chapter 10. As Samuel led me away, someone snapped a photo of us. I thought he hadn't noticed, so I whispered, "Do you want me to stop them?" After all, Samuel's private life was much more valuable to the press than Jorge's. If the picture spread, it would create a huge scandal, one that would surely reach his parents. Samuel had helped me so much, and I didn't want to bring him any trouble. But Samuel only shrugged. Let them. I'm curious what it's like to be on a tabloid's front page. What a strange man. Seeing the confusion in my expression, Samuel raised a brow. What? Do you mind making headlines with me? It's not that. I'm worried. There's nothing to worry about. I already called my parents this morning. What? Don't overthink it. Everything's handled. I stared at him, trying to process his words. Samuel had this uncanny ability to make people feel at ease, as if no matter what happened, he'd have it under control. With him, it felt like even if the sky were to fall, he'd hold it up for me. If someone like him were by your side. Wait, what was I thinking? Was I losing my mind? I reminded myself of the cold reality. Samuel had only approached me because of his father's illness. Our agreement clearly stated he could end things whenever he wanted. What was I to him? Really? Nothing more than a temporary distraction in his otherwise rich and eventful life. How could I even dare to entertain the idea of wanting more? Chapter 11. That morning, the news of Samuel and me being photographed spread like wildfire. What surprised me the most was that the first person to call me wasn't a journalist, it was Jorge. I could almost picture his sneering face through the phone. Emma, you must be feeling pretty proud of yourself right now. Huh? Jorge had spent so much effort making sure no one ever knew about our past relationship. But now, Samuel was letting the news spread without a care. Even though my relationship with Samuel was fake, the contrast was satisfying. Why wouldn't I be proud? Once I marry your brother, you'll have to call me sister-in-law. I replied coolly. You're dreaming. Jorge sounded livid, repeating you're dreaming like a madman before hanging up abruptly. I shrugged, figuring he was just having one of his temper tantrums. I didn't think much of it, but that night, Jorge, reeking of alcohol, showed up at my doorstep. I later learned that he had gone to see Gloria that evening, and they'd had a massive fight over something. Unlike the old me, Gloria didn't tolerate his spoiled behavior. She not only argued with him but also embarrassed him in public. Suddenly, Jorge started missing how well I had treated him. Seeing me, the woman he had cast aside, now making headlines with his brother, looking so harmonious and sweet, it made him feel bitter, resentful. Emma, I'll give you a chance to come back to me, he slurred. I didn't need it. Seeing my expressionless face, he snapped in frustration. Have you forgotten how you used to beg me? Do you want me to post those love letters you sent me? Go ahead, I replied, unfazed. Jorge was stunned by my indifference, but I really didn't care anymore. It was no secret that I had lost that relationship. Everyone knew. All I felt now was relief. Thank goodness my relationship with Samuel wasn't real. Otherwise, I would feel even more humiliated in front of him. Chapter 12. True to his word, Jorge posted one of my old love letters online the very next night. However, just as the post started gaining traction, it mysteriously vanished. Along with it, any mentions of my name, Jorge's, or Samuel's became impossible to post. I was puzzled by what had happened when Samuel called me. His voice was unusually deep. Come downstairs. You're outside? Yes. The tone of Samuel's voice was short, clipped, almost as if nothing was out of the ordinary. Yet, when I reflected on it carefully, it felt like there was a hint of restrained anger. Was he upset about the old love letter Jorge had posted online? Even though it was Jorge who had stirred the pot, the words were mine, and they reflected my most vulnerable, humiliating feelings. Now Samuel wanted to meet, and I suddenly felt a wave of guilt and embarrassment welling up inside me. In a cautious voice, I asked over the phone, "Is something wrong? Do you need to talk to me?" "Come down," he repeated, the words carrying even more force than before. With no other choice, I agreed. "All right, I'm coming down." It had started drizzling at some point. The fine, delicate rain drifted through the air, glowing softly under the streetlights, giving the night a hazy beauty. Samuel's car was parked just outside the building. The rear window was rolled halfway down, and as I approached, he turned to look at me, almost as if he sensed my presence. For a brief moment, our eyes met, and I could feel my heartbeat quicken. Internally, I let out a bitter chuckle. If I had a tail, it would have been wagging uncontrollably by now. Is it really that hard to hide feelings for someone once they've taken root? Chapter 13. I reached the car, lowering my voice as I asked, "Why did you need me so late?" Before he answered, I heard the car door click open. Samuel gestured for me to get in. "Where are we going?" I asked, still confused. Although we had an agreement, there was nothing in it about late-night meetings or accompanying him like this. For the past 3 years, Samuel had rarely contacted me at night, especially without prior notice. And right now, I wasn't exactly eager to be alone with him. I dreaded the possibility that he might bring up that love letter, and as much as I'd already felt humiliated by it, hearing him speak of it in person would be unbearable. "I'm feeling a bit tired, so if it's not important." Before I could finish my sentence, Samuel pushed the car door further open. Then he stepped out and insisted I get in. Maybe it was his intense presence, or perhaps my unsettled emotions, but I couldn't refuse. It wasn't until we were at the third intersection that I snapped out of my daze and realized we were heading toward Samuel's place. Outside, the rain had intensified. The windshield wipers started moving as the partition between the front and back seats silently rose, enclosing us in a private bubble. I could feel he was about to ask me something, but before any words could leave his lips, his kiss landed first. Unlike that night at the house, where he was firm yet gentle, this time he was different. He kissed me with an intensity akin to a wild animal, fierce and relentless. As if something had triggered him, my breathing became erratic, matching the fevered rhythm of his kiss. The rain outside intensified, masking everything with its steady pattern. I whispered softly, "Boss, call me by my name." Samuel tightened his grip around me, leaving little room to breathe. Before I could resist the overwhelming pressure, I gave in as he wished. "Samuel, you're hurting me." "I'm jealous," he replied. At that exact moment, a blaring car horn interrupted his words. I didn't catch everything he said, but his eyes seemed darker than ever, brimming with emotions too complex to decipher. Just as I was about to ask, the car came to an abrupt halt. In an instant, Samuel wrapped his arms around me, his movements swift as he pressed the partition button. The driver, visibly shaken, turned around in alarm. "Boss, it's Jorge's car." Chapter 14. It turned out that Jorge had also gone to my apartment to find me, but he'd arrived a bit too late. By the time he got there, he saw me getting into Samuel's car, and then he tailed us all the way here. Finally, he found an opportunity to block the car, carelessly positioning his vehicle diagonally in front of us without any concern for the potential traffic jam behind. Jorge stood by our window, knocking loudly, despite the rain's incessant noise. His furious shout was unmistakable even over the downpour. "Emma, get out!" 3 years after our breakup, and now, as his supposed future sister-in-law, he still dared to treat me with such insolence. I glanced at Samuel. His tone was calm. "Stay in the car." Samuel stepped out, with the driver hastily following to shield him with an umbrella. Jorge stood alone in the rain, his eyes filled with fury as he shouted, "Brother, you can have any woman you want. Why do you have to take her from me?" Samuel cast him a cold look. "When she was with you, I never interfered, but now she's mine, and you'd better recognize that." "What?" Jorge looked taken aback, but then quickly pieced it together, his face contorting with realization. "You wanted her all along? This was premeditated?" Samuel didn't respond, but his expression said enough. Over the years, Jorge had been with countless women. As long as he didn't introduce them to his parents, nobody paid attention. So the fact that Samuel had taken notice of me meant there was something special about his intentions. Jorge, however, couldn't grasp that Samuel could actually have feelings for me. Feeling deceived and enraged, he lashed out, striking Samuel directly across the face, his fist colliding with Samuel's mouth. The driver froze in shock, waving his free hand frantically as if trying to shield Samuel from further harm. Samuel, however, slowly pushed him away, perhaps because he had held a high position for many years. Everyone was accustomed to seeing Samuel as composed and dignified, unaware that he could also resort to physical violence. When Jorge was kicked and sent flying, the driver was once again shocked. This time, he was completely petrified on the spot. Jorge landed hard on the ground, his face twisted in pain, and he cursed under his breath. He tried to stand, but failed, ending up kneeling on one leg. Samuel walked up to him, towering over him as he coldly asked, "How do you want to die?" The rain kept pouring, and both of them were soaked. But Samuel, despite the rain, carried an intimidating aura with no hint of disarray. Jorge, on the other hand, looked like a drenched dog. In every way, he was no match for his elder brother. If he stopped this farce, he could still live a carefree life as a wealthy second-generation heir, without worrying about food or drink. Otherwise, being thrown out of the family was a real possibility. Before Samuel returned to the car, he left Jorge with one final warning: pack your things and get out of the country tomorrow. Or else. He didn't finish his sentence, but the look in his eyes said it all. Over the years, Jorge had caused countless problems, and Samuel had always cleaned up after him. Samuel's parents had long been fed up with their second son and didn't want to see him. So, for Jorge, if Samuel no longer tolerated him, he had no choice but to leave. Chapter 15. In the car, the driver handed over a soft towel. Before Samuel could reach for it, I grabbed it first. "I'll help you dry off." Samuel glanced at me, indifferent. His aura was so cold that even in silence, he made people feel anxious and terrified. I gently wiped his hair, trying several times to start a conversation to break the suffocating silence. But after seeing the wound on his lip, I swallowed my words. Earlier, after Jorge hit him, I had wanted to get out of the car. This whole situation had started because of me. What kind of person would I be hiding inside? But it was as if Samuel had eyes on the back of his head. Just as I reached for the car door, he glanced back at me. I could feel it. He didn't want me to get out. But every second I stayed in the car felt like sitting on pins and needles. Agonizing. The driver was just as uneasy as I was. And when the car finally pulled into the garage, I could clearly hear him sigh in relief. "Boss, we've arrived." Samuel opened the door and got out of the car without even looking at me. I wasn't sure if he was angry with Jorge or with me. In a hurry, I chased after him. After entering the house, he didn't bother with the wound on the corner of his mouth and walked straight to the bathroom. "Samuel!" I called out to him. "Take care of your wound first." "No need." He didn't even turn his head. At that moment, I wasn't sure if I was just too anxious or if my temper flared up as well, but my voice suddenly rose. "If you're tired of me, have the driver take me home." Hearing this, Samuel finally stopped walking, but he still didn't turn around. Instead, he asked, somewhat out of nowhere, "Didn't you hear what I said in the car?" I wasn't sure which part he was referring to, and I was afraid guessing wrong would upset him even more. In the silence, Samuel finally turned around to face me. I said, "I'm jealous." "What?" "I'm jealous of how wholeheartedly you loved him." His words hit me like a thunderclap, completely shattering my thoughts. I couldn't think clearly. He was jealous of me loving Jorge? Why would he be jealous? Could it be? Chapter 16. Seeing that I didn't respond, Samuel gave a self-deprecating smile and turned back to head toward the bathroom. Before he could close the door, I rushed over. Samuel was startled by me, afraid of catching my hand in the door. He quickly pulled it back halfway. "What are you doing?" "I have something to say." "Then say it." Jorge was my first love. At that time, I was young and naive. Jorge introduced me to many people and experiences, and I admired him deeply. So later, when he forced me to break up through emotional coldness, I wasn't able to leave right away. I've always believed that when you love someone, you should be sincere and straightforward. If you love, then love. If you don't, then don't. There shouldn't be excuses or manipulation. What if I've manipulated you? Before Samuel asked that question, I had already wondered countless times in my mind. Does he like me? Otherwise, why would he protect me at every turn? Why would he fight his own brother for someone like me? I wanted to ask him clearly, but I was afraid. Afraid that the answer wouldn't be what I hoped for, and even more afraid that it would be. Someone like him deserves to be with someone better, someone more exceptional, and Suddenly, a soft laugh came from above. Samuel was slightly annoyed. Didn't you say you should be sincere and straightforward? Are you only sincere with him, but want to hide things from me? I was overthinking it. You've always kept things clear, haven't you? It was me who crossed the line. He was deeply disappointed, not even bothering to close the door, just turning away. The silence around us was overwhelming. Aside from the sound of the rain pattering outside, the only things I could hear were my own breath and heartbeat. Each beat was filled with frustration and a bit of fear. I had been too obvious the last 2 times I looked at him. Someone as smart as him, how could he not see through my thoughts? Yes, I like you. In the quiet, my confession rang clear and distinct. Samuel turned back. He didn't seem too surprised. In fact, there was a hint of joy in his expression. Then I asked him, "And you? Do you also? Isn't it obvious?" He interrupted. It was quite obvious, but I had always been too afraid to believe it. Even after the words were spoken, the atmosphere didn't lighten. Instead, it became even more awkward. I stood there, unsure whether to retreat or call him over to treat his wound. Samuel didn't say anything either, just kept staring at me. In the end, I couldn't stand his gaze any longer and awkwardly asked, "Are you still going to shower?" Samuel, Chapter 17. After I finished treating Samuel's wound, he confessed a few things to me. For example, he fell for me at first sight, but that time, I had gone to see Jorge. When he realized I was his brother's girlfriend, he decided not to pursue it further. He also admitted that 3 years ago, when Jorge and I had our falling out, our encounter wasn't coincidental, it was intentional. He made sure to appear in front of me. That agreement was just an excuse to keep me by his side. He shredded it right after. He couldn't be sure if I had truly moved on from Jorge, so he brought me here. The time and place of that dinner gathering were deliberately disclosed to me by him. On the surface, he seemed to be helping me at my request, but in reality, he wanted to see if I'd rekindle anything with Jorge after meeting him again. He won that gamble. I no longer cared about Jorge. In fact, when Jorge tried to reconnect with me, I felt nothing but disgust. But even so, I didn't dare to hope for something real with Samuel. His parents would likely never approve. The next day, Jorge really did leave the country, quite swiftly. But only a few days after he left, Samuel's mother called, asking him to bring me to the estate where his father was recuperating. Samuel didn't ask a single question, but in the car, he told me, "You don't need to worry about anything later. I'll be there for you." What's going on? It's going to be quite lively over there today. I understood. Besides his parents, there were other people present. At first, I guessed they were other elders from his family, but once we met, I realized it was actually the woman Samuel's parents had previously picked for him. And the reason she was here today? It was all thanks to Jorge. Who knows what Jorge told her? Even after leaving, he still managed to set me up. Samuel was called to the study by his parents, and as soon as the room was empty, Miss Miranda went full force on me. "Miss Emma, I heard your family is quite ordinary. Don't you think being with Samuel might create some communication barriers?" Normal people don't have communication barriers unless. I gave her a meaningful glance. Her temper flared, and she stood up instantly. "What do you mean by that? Are you saying I'm not normal?" "I never said that. Don't get too worked up." The more harmlessly I smiled, the angrier she became. What good is a sharp tongue, with a poor background like yours? You'll never be worthy of entering Samuel's family. The way she said that, anyone who didn't know better would think Samuel's family was hers to rule. At that moment, Samuel and his parents came downstairs after their talk, and Samuel's expression immediately darkened when he heard her words. Miranda, thinking they were dissatisfied with me, happily walked over and tried to link arms with Samuel's mother. But Samuel's mother subtly dodged her. Miranda froze, too embarrassed to even pull her hand back. Samuel's mother didn't comfort her either and simply said, Miranda, we have some family matters to discuss, and it's not appropriate for outsiders to be here. We won't be inviting you to stay for dinner today. Now, besides the awkwardness, Miranda was visibly upset, her lips trembling and her eyes red, as if she was about to cry. I turned to Samuel, puzzled, silently asking what was going on. After all, when I entered earlier, his parents had been lukewarm towards me, but incredibly warm and welcoming to Miranda. How could things change so dramatically in just a short conversation upstairs? Chapter 18. At the dinner table, Samuel's mother kept urging me to eat more. His father was also very friendly, even asking when Samuel and I planned to register our marriage. I had just taken a sip of soup, and his question startled me so much that I choked and coughed several times. Samuel handed me a napkin and gently patted my back. His actions were natural and kind, but I was completely panicked. Even though his parents had now changed their attitude toward me, I still didn't know the reason. Is it really okay for him to be so affectionate with me in front of them like this? I could only give him a look, trying to remind him whether Samuel misunderstood my look or was deliberately teasing me. He actually picked up some food and put it on my plate after my silent reminder. Eat more. You're too thin right now. Seriously, can't you see I'm practically burying my face in the bowl? Are you trying to make me suffocate here? Fortunately, after a while, his family finally stopped focusing on me and started discussing business. But they were talking about major company decisions right in front of me. Weren't they worried I might leak something? All I could do was quietly eat and try to minimize my presence, too scared to say a word. The end result was, I overate. Chapter 19. On the way back, after repeatedly asking, Samuel finally told me why his parents had suddenly changed their attitude. My mother is a bit superstitious and had someone read your birth chart, and it matched well with yours? Yeah, that's it? Judging by his enigmatic expression, I knew there was more to it. Samuel smiled and took my hand, gently squeezing it again and again. He said that in business, he never enters a deal unless he's sure of winning, and he approaches relationships the same way, always planning ahead. 3 years ago, there was a major project that he could have secured before he met me, but he deliberately delayed it, waiting until I was by his side before signing the contract. There were also a few times when he encountered difficulties, and although he had already figured out solutions, he purposely created an illusion of uncertainty, letting the breakthroughs happen with me, as if that wasn't enough. After we got together, his father's health started to improve as well, so now his parents fully believe in the idea that I'm a blessing to their family. And since these words came from a trusted spiritual guide, they're eager for Samuel and me to get married as soon as possible. Aren't you afraid that if you kept delaying the project, it would have fallen through? No, I was confident. Then why weren't you confident about me? Samuel, because I saw how much pain you were in after your breakup. I didn't know if you could fully let him go. When you first stayed by my side, it was because you had nowhere else to turn, not because you loved me. So, I was a little scared. A man who was used to always having a plan, someone who never enters a deal without assurance, admitted that he was scared. I looked at him deeply, unsure how to express what I was feeling at that moment. He stood up for me, favored me, and paved the way ahead. All I had to do was walk forward. But even after doing all that, he was still afraid that I didn't love him. Such a strong person, yet in love. He tread carefully, full of uncertainty and doubt. I suddenly understood why. On the night Jorge intercepted my car, Samuel, despite knowing I liked him, had forced me to say it out loud first. It was because that emotional letter had shaken him so deeply. He was jealous, scared, and unsure of what to do. He wanted to get a sense of security from me. And in the ambiguous space between a man and a woman, the most direct way to feel secure is to express love. I'm glad I didn't hesitate that night. In fact, I want to make things even clearer. The past is the past. I've never considered looking back. That time, I was in pain because I couldn't understand. They say sincerity is a killer move. But why did my sincerity almost destroy me in the end? Now I know the answer. Sincerity is only a killer move when the other person is sincere too. Samuel was willing to wait 3 years for me to let go of the past. He methodically cleared every obstacle, step by step, to ensure his parents would accept me. He showed his sincerity long before I did. So, from now on, I will love you with all my heart.